kind of misses the whole point of it all.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been looking at, is that, you know, just because we're the Western culture doesn't mean that that's the one that God is seated in. Not that he doesn't supersede all cultures, but...
Was there any more of that good bread?
Yeah.
Boy, I'd take another slice of that. That's worth eating.
It is worth eating. I will give Alicia our appreciation.
You were saying something about wanting to make some questions or something.
Yeah, let's do that.
Go ahead.
Well, all right. So one question is, let's see if I can come up with it. Oh, this one is about judgment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the questioner poses it like this: if our sins are carried away from the east to the west,
mm-hmm.
then why is there a judgment?
Okay. What's the meaning of the word judgment anyway?
Put things in its place.
Put everything where it belongs. So, judgment works in two ways. Every time you use a judgment on anything, you're putting something where it should go, where it belongs. If it's something worthwhile, something good, something that's acceptable, you put it over here where that stuff goes. If it's no good, it goes over in the junk pile.
Mm-hmm.
And until the Lord can take away, or has taken away, our sin from us and removed it from us as far as the east and the west, but is what we commonly call the judgment day, or the position where it says that the whole creation of everyone who's been into the graves would be resurrected to stand before God for judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So the judgment that he's talking about there is kind of like making it a public declaration, so we put it that way, that here's where the bad stuff goes, here's where the good stuff goes. Now, when he says the whole world, and it really does say that they that are in the graves would be resurrected in order to stand in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So who's he talking about?
The people from the graves?
Yeah.
Everybody. You want more?
Yeah.
This is the cream.
In other words, it doesn't... What if you're a bad guy? You've never been redeemed. Then what? You stand there before the judgment.
You're going to get judged.
What if you've been made righteous by the grace of God?
Well, you're getting judged too.
Yeah. Why?
Because God's putting everything in its place.
Yeah. And he even describes it, I'm sure, in a rather parable sort of a form. He says it's like a shepherd or a herder separating the sheep from the goats.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's just a figure. There's nothing evil about goats and nothing particularly righteous about sheep.
Right.
But they show a thing that was very commonly done, particularly in the old days and still to some degree even now. A lot of times they would raise both sheep and goats even together.
Uh-huh.
Because in some ways they probably handle them the same way. They both eat about the same stuff and whatever. So you got a big flock of sheep and goats, and then somebody comes and wants to buy some sheep from you, maybe. So what do you have to do?
Get the sheep in one place and goats in
the other. You got to separate them because he only wants sheep. If you just herded the whole bunch into his wagon or something, you wouldn't do what he wants. So and that's just a common procedure. I mean, there are different reasons why you separate sheep from goats. If you want to shear the sheep, then you'd separate them probably from the goats to do that, or for any number of reasons. But it doesn't say that there's something bad about goats. something good about sheep. It's just an ordinary procedure that a shepherd would do at various reasons to do it. But he would separate sheep from the goats. Now, once he does that, then all the sheep are over in one place and the goats are over there. And then the Lord says at this judgment, it would be like that. He would separate the sheep from the goats. The minute he separates the sheep from the goats, at that exact point, there's only one thing about it. They're in two groups. They're not together. And then he says to the ones on his left side, probably referring to the goats, get away from me. I have no use for it. To the ones on this side, he says, enter into the joy of the Lord. Now, at that point is not when he decides who's right and who's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just that point he separates them. Mm-hmm. So to take right now, we live in the world. If you see a crowd of people coming, what kind of people are in that crowd? There's two kinds of people in that crowd.
Sheep and goats.
Yeah. Or the redeemed and the unredeemed. Mm-hmm. So you look at a crowd of people, can you tell which was which by looking at them?
No.
But the part of the judgment of the Lord, he will separate them. Once he gets them separated, will there be any doubt who's who?
No.
And then at that point he says, okay, here's what happens to this bunch, here's what happens to that bunch. Now, so what does judgment do? It simply carries out the result or the purpose for separating. That's all. And, we compare it to a earthly court trial, for example. You have one called a judge. And then you have a trial. You have people that have some kind of an issue. And, of course, the purpose of the trial, theoretically, and you can't go too far because it's so corrupted, but theoretically, the idea is to finally determine who's right and who's wrong. That's what it's about. In any case, no matter what it is. Somebody has something that they're right about, somebody has something they're wrong about, whatever. It could be anything from a traffic ticket to mass murder, anything. But in our human view of it, the judgment is to determine the facts, theoretically. But God's judgment is not to determine the facts. He's already determined the fact. His judgment is to declare, now here's where this is all going. So, when he says, for example, a very common verse that people have quoted thousands of times, clear out of its context, they'll say, we're not supposed to judge. Mm-hmm. Where did they get that idea, that we're not supposed to judge? Where did they get that?
Well, the Lord said, do not judge lest you be judged.
Yeah. But he didn't tell you don't do judgment. He said, don't pass judgment that you can't pass. In other words, you can't say, have an old saying, the pot calling the kettle black. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, it's calling out somebody's speck in their eye when you got a plank in yours.
Yeah. He's really saying, he says the pot calls the kettle black. Which one's black?
They both are.
They both are. Why would one call the other one something? Because in the idea that he is really insulting the other guy, or he's saying he's belittling him, isn't he? Mm-hmm.
It's trying to put him in the place before the judgment.
He's making a judgment that he can't pass. Mm-hmm. If he condemns the pot for being black, or the kettle for being black, and he's also black, well, what's he doing by doing that?
That's judging.
Well, he condemns the other guy
for condemning himself.
And he's just saying it's a self-condemnation. Mm-hmm. So don't do that. If you can't pass the judgment that you're using, in other words, you can You have to make judgment about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Every little thing you do requires, you have to decide, is this the right thing to do or not? Or is this what should be done now or not? Or how should it be done? Or anything. Or if any action you take, if you decide who you want to be a friend with, it requires a judgment. But whatever you make a decision about, you better make sure that you can do. If you're saying that whatever that guy's doing is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
if you do the same thing, that's hypocrisy. You can't do that. So when the Lord says, don't judge, and the way it's translated into our language says, judge not that you won't be judged. Like if you judge, then somebody's going to condemn you. That's not what he's really saying. Don't judge in a way that would condemn you.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you're passing judgment on something that you yourself could not stand, why, don't do that. But so the world, or I say the world, sadly, many well-informed, well-intended believers say, well, we're not supposed to judge. It doesn't say that at all. If you don't do any judging, you can't make any decision whatsoever.
Right.
You couldn't scratch your head if you didn't make a judgment. You couldn't do anything without making a decision. And of course, in the Hebrew numbers, Beit is the second number, or a second letter, that is. It also means a house or a tent. Now, the number 2 is a word in Hebrew that literally means 2 ones.
Say again?
It means 2 ones.
Hmm.
What do you have when you got 2 ones?
2.
You got 2. It's the first number that involves multiples. Because 1, which is Aleph, that's just 1. What's 1 times 1?
1.
What's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1? Out 10,000 times. It comes out to 1. You can't multiply 1. But if you take 2, what's 2 times 2?
4.
What's 2 times 2 times 2?
16.
Before long, you're going into astronomical numbers,
Yeah.
because it's a multiple. So 2 does something that it makes an increase possible. And you think about it, if someone says you're going to do a process, you say, well, there's 2 ways we could do this. There's 2 ways we could take care of this. So what do you have to do right now?
Make a decision.
Make a decision. Or if you say you're walking on a trail, you come to a fork in the trail, never been there before, but suddenly there's a fork, what do you have to do?
Make a decision.
So whenever you have 2 of anything, it involves making decisions. And decision is judgment, isn't it? In fact, they even refer to a trial coming up with a decision, don't they? Because that's really what a trial is about. And a trial is a judgment. So you have to judge, and you have to make decisions. If we weren't making decisions, if we were operating without making decisions, we'd be just like a puppet hanging on strings, A puppet hanging on a string can raise his arms, legs, and walk, and he can wiggle around, do all kinds of things. Does he decide to do anything?
Mm-mm.
Why does he do it?
Somebody else is pulling the strings.
Somebody's pulling the strings. But we're not puppets, and God doesn't want puppets. He wants real people who have decided to be his people. Now, we can't make ourselves into his people, but we make the decision that says to him, I want what you got. Bring it on. And because he will not force you. God is a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
He will not force you to do anything. He'll influence you. He'll pressure you. He'll urge you. He will beg you to do the right thing. But it ultimately comes down to this. What do you want? You judge. If you can't judge, then you're nothing but a puppet.
I think I want to reshape the question a little bit, because
Okay?
I don't think that the purpose of the question was so much as judging as it was the idea that, I mean, it's kind of a theological, why did God work it out that way?
Mm-hmm.
That we get our, sins redeemed when we believe. So why do we keep sinning? And, am I making any sense? So we got this sin in front of us. And, the religious people teach that, well, if you go sideways right now,
Mm-hmm.
then day of judgment, you're not one of God's people.
Well, the Apostle Paul asked the same question in Romans. He said, what I want to do, I can't seem to do. What I don't want to do, I end up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he doing the things he doesn't want to do?
Because he's got flesh.
Yeah, we have two natures, and the minute you have two of anything, you got to decide which one you're going to go with, don't you?
Yeah.
So here's when we're born into this world, everybody in the world, I don't care where they are or what the kind of people they are, they're all descendants of Adam. Is that right? I mean, they don't believe it, but they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're descendants of Adam. Now, Adam has a nature. God has a nature. Everybody has every living thing has a nature. A tree has a nature. A dog has a nature. What's a nature? What does that mean?
I mean, that's what you do naturally.
Yeah.
Without being taught it.
That is your natural way. And I don't understand this, but they call this thing called DNA. What's DNA?
It's the way that your chemicals in your body are built.
Okay, so it somehow determines whether you're going to be a corn husk or you're going to be a parrot, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, something in this, I don't know how it is. You can pick up a little tiny seed, that comes floating down through the air. That thing has the potential to become a great big tall cottonwood tree. Yeah. I don't care how much they study it, God himself knows how that does. Mm-hmm. So you could take another seed, it might look just like this one, and it becomes a piece of alfalfa or something. I don't know, But everything has a nature. Adam had a nature. He's created. There's a natural way that Adam operates. Now, at first, and we read his story, for a while, everything was going good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how long that was. Doesn't really matter. But everything was fine for a while. And then one day, the demonic spirit Satan shows up and really didn't do much except ask a couple of questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't lay a hand on him, didn't threaten him or anything. He just, did God really say that, Surely he didn't mean that, did he? Something like that. So why did Adam buy into that line?
Because he made a choice.
Yeah, but isn't he a good man? How can he make a bad choice? Did God create him evil?
I don't think so, no. He created him with a choice.
With a choice. And because God is honest, he must provide an alternative to what's right.
Right.
Because if
you just have one, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, if God says, well, there's two ways to go about this, but they're both identical, then you pick one. What difference does it make? They're both the same. They have to be different, or it's not a real choice, is it?
Right.
So God's honest. He said, all right, I've created you with the ability to choose. You are not forced to be a right man. Mm-hmm. It implies that Adam walked with God in the cool of the day. I presume that means early in the morning before it warmed up. he'd take a morning walk with the Lord. And we don't know how many times that happened or anything. Just so anyway, would he enjoy that?
Yeah.
We look forward to it every day.
Yeah.
Because it was such a beautiful time and everything. Now,
His teacher.
It'd be nice if he just kept on doing that forever, wouldn't it? But if he did, if you were to ask him, why do you do this every day? What would he answer you if you said, why do you do it?
Who, Adam?
Yeah. Why do you want to walk with God? Why do you do it?
Because I like him.
I like it. I like doing it. That's why. And well, what if you didn't have to do it? Do you have to do it?
No.
You do it because you want to.
Yeah.
Does God make you do it?
No.
So God doesn't force you to walk with him, but he provides the opportunity. But because of his integrity, he must allow a choice. Because if you love somebody because that's all you can do is love them and there's no other choice, well then, what do you got going there?
Not much of a love situation.
Yeah. Because love is based on a wanting, a willingness to do something. And along with that, what is the definition of love anyway? How would you define that word?
Well, probably a dictionary would say something like intense affection or something like that.
Yeah, but that's a phony definition because that's defining a word with the same word.
Well, it's also that's something positive we got from the Greeks. Nuances of the word love. So you got friendship love, you got erotic love, you got agape love, and you got familiarity love.
Okay. It says, we pray, may God bless you. What does bless mean?
Smile favorably upon you. Give you the good things that he's got.
Yeah. It really literally means, to bless means to kneel down. That's the Hebrew word baruch. And it means to kneel down and present you with a gift. So it's not just giving you something, but it's kneeling down. So what does the kneeling down part got to do with it?
Kind of like when Yeshua kneeled down and cleaned the feet.
What's the idea of kneeling down?
Humbling himself.
Yeah.
Lowering himself.
You're putting whoever he is above yourself. You're making yourself subject to him. So real love means to kneel down and give a gift. Now, what could you give someone that would be worthy of the word love?
Yourself.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you could give them a new ballpoint pen or something. That's nice. But real love puts you, everything you are, is offering to them. The Romans said the way you worship God is to present yourself as a living sacrifice. That's what love is. You can do a religious ritual without any kneeling whatsoever. In fact, much of what's done as religious ceremony or ritual is just to sort of compliment ourselves for how holy we are, right? Much of it is based on pride. But real, genuine love bows down and kneels before the other and gives them a gift, which is ultimately all you got, So anyway, the concept that here's Adam, he's made, and he has a nature which requires him to make choices about everything. That's built right into him. much of animal action, not totally, but most of it is just instinctive.
Yeah.
You know, crocodiles, what do they eat?
Meat.
Would they ever feed on grass or? Why not?
Because they eat meat.
Why? Why do they do
nature.
that? Okay, so you take a cow. Cows don't eat meat; they eat grass or hay. That's all. If you threw a piece of meat out to a cow, would he try to eat it?
No.
Why not?
They don't eat meat.
Why not?
It's their nature.
Their nature. So the animals do what their nature requires, and we call it instinct. Certain birds fly south every winter, and they fly back north for the summer. Do they make a decision to do that?
No.
Do they have a conference and vote on what day shall we take off for Florida or whenever? There's no decision. It's just in their head, and just when the day comes, they just go. And how do they know where to go?
Instinct.
Yeah. They don't know anything about navigation, and, people try to figure it out, but birds will fly from the Arctic clear down to South America, and it'll go right exactly to the same place every year. An airline pilot, fully trained, could not fly a plane from there to there without navigational aid. He'd never find it because it's not in the human nature to do those kinds of something in their nature. So here's Adam. He's got this nature, and the nature is to choose. God doesn't force him to do what's right. He shows him what's right. He offers him what's right. He tells him what to do that is right. But it's finally comes down to Adam, choose. So Adam makes his choice. Mm-hmm. So part of the Adamic nature is to choose evil. It just becomes our nature. When you're born out of Adam, you're going to do what Adam does. What does Adam do? He disobeys. He rebels against God. Now, that Adam, or that nature, sometimes referred to as the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by definition, what does flesh mean? What does that word mean?
Same thing as meat.
Mm-hmm. In other words, our physical body is made up, and the physical body is more than just a piece of meat. It actually, it has a brain. It has the opportunity to make decisions, to learn things, to think about stuff. It has the sense of feeling about things, reacting to things. It's all part of it. So I kind of call it the mental and psychological powers that control the body. The body itself is not evil. It's just your hands. If your hands pick up a tool, it's because the hand decided to do that. Mm-mm. It just does what the brain tells it to do. If a hand picked up a gun and killed somebody with it, is the hand guilty?
No, the whole body's guilty.
The body's not guilty.
Well, the human.
Yeah. What is guilty is what's in your mind or in your thinking, and that's why I call it the mental and psychological powers that control the body. The body's just a vehicle. You could drive this vehicle from here to San Diego and have fun, or you could deliberately plow it into a crowd of people and try to hurt somebody with it. Mm-hmm. Is it the car's fault if it does the wrong thing? Because it's just a machine. It just does what the driver tells it to do.
Right.
So this thing called the flesh is really your mental and inward, I guess you could call it psychological or your mental powers that really direct the body as to what to do. But that came directly from Adam, and it's got his nature in it. Now, the apostle wrote that when we come into a relationship with God, we become a partaker of the divine nature. Mm-hmm. What's the divine nature?
It's that goodness. It's
what goodness?
It's the goodness of God.
Yes, because God has a nature. Now, a nature is not part of you. You could poke around in your brain or in your chest or somewhere. When are you going to find the nature?
You're not going to find it.
Because it's not a physical part of you.
Right.
It's just a way of defining this is how you do things. This is why you do things. This is your attitude and you're feeling. So a nature is just a way of describing the way you do things. It's not really a part of you. You can't take a nature out of somebody. You couldn't operate. Well, a surgeon couldn't find it in you. There's no place in you called this is your nature. But
not even part of the brain.
Yeah. So, but it's a way of saying this is how you do. This is how you think, and here's what you do. So, what does God do? What does He do, and what does He say, and how does He think?
Holy.
But whatever good. His nature is, that's now what's natural to you. Do you have to be taught what is natural to you?
No.
You don't have to teach anybody to do what's natural because it's built in them. They will do it. Why does a dog bark?
Nature.
Yeah. Now, do you have to teach a dog to bark?
No.
Now, a little puppy, when he's first born, doesn't bark immediately, but pretty soon as things start to grow, he will begin to bark. Yeah. And why does he do it? Is he learning to bark? Is he someone telling him how to do it? Mm-hmm. It's just part of him. He just does it. And so that's the nature. So we've been made to be a partaker of the divine nature, which means that God has given into us His way of thinking and acting. But if that's all there was to it, why then from then on, everything we'd ever think or do would be exactly what God says. Right. But we've got the remains of old man Adam's nature in us, too. So we really have two natures. And, you know, the old saying, it takes two to tango. So how many times have you felt yourself having an inward argument? I should do this, but I don't want to do it. Or I should not do this, but I really want to. And you have this debate going within you. Why do you have a debate going within you?
I don't know. Is that a conscious?
Because there's two natures.
Yeah.
One of them wants to do what Adam would do. The other wants to do. Now, I say one. I don't mean there's two people in there. But there's two ways. You're only one. But you have a nature that wants to follow Adam. You also have a nature that wants to follow God. Now, so here's the part of you, not part of you, but your nature that wants to do right. What's it think of the nature that wants to do wrong?
It's two different things.
What does it think of it?
Well, it's opposed to it.
Yeah, it hates it too. And if the divine nature that's in you that runs how you think rightly, if you could, would you destroy that nature that wants you to do wrong? Would you?
Probably, yeah.
Probably?
No, you would.
Why?
Because you want that. You want good.
Yeah. Well, then why don't you do it? Why don't you do it then?
Because you can't.
You can't. Because if you could, now that's part of the way God made us. If you had the power to destroy the bad nature in you, then you'd become righteous by what you do, and you could say, well, what do I need with God?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we'd go right back to Adam in the garden where Satan comes in and says, why don't you be your own God? You know what's right. Just do it.
Right.
Why do you want to let God run you? You know, when God told him specifically, you can do anything you want in this garden. Everything is here for your use. You do it the way you want. You name the animals. Here's the food for you. There's different kinds of fruit. Pick whatever you like. It's yours. You arrange the garden. You're the man.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing that you don't want to do. What?
Eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Why? What's so bad about that?
It reminds me of that Magician's Nephew that I just read about the tree that will give you it'll give you your wish, but also give you despair.
Well, why? What's the matter with the tree of knowledge? Don't you want knowledge? Isn't that a good thing?
Because it's not God's way. It's not by His invitation, and it's against His will.
Well, God knows the difference between good and evil, does He not?
Yes.
Do you know the difference between good and evil?
Huh. No. Not by nature.
Well, what do you mean not by nature? What does that mean?
It means you don't know.
Okay.
You have to be told it.
Well, where are you going to get that difference between good and evil?
From the Lord?
Yes. If you get it by your own effort, by seizing this fruit that you're not to, then you have just elevated yourself to God's position, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And you just can't. God says, I will not have that. So now Adam did, though. He ate that fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said, he has now become like us.
Mm-hmm.
So has Adam become God?
No.
Well, the Lord said he's become like us.
Huh. That's a tough one. So if the Lord said it, it's got to be right.
So Adam's God now, huh?
No.
Well.
But there's a like to it. Just like we're made in His likeness.
Yeah. When you like something, you're not that thing.
Right.
A photograph of you, if it's a good one, you can say, well, this looks just like you.
Yeah.
But it's not you.
Right.
And it's far from you. But it's like it. So it says now Adam knows good from evil because he's like us. However, he's not God. And so does God say, I'm going to destroy you?
No. He said that you will die.
What does that
You'll
mean?
be separated from, from this
You'll
life.
be separated. And so he throws him out of the garden. And the other thing that Adam discovered something he had, part of knowing good from evil, something he had never known before. He suddenly knew. What? As soon as he took that fruit, he knew something he had never known
His
before.
nakedness.
Yes. All right. When he was in the garden walking with God, he was fully clothed.
Fully clothed with God?
With innocence.
Yeah, okay.
What's innocent mean?
Have no part of anything that's wrong.
Yeah, no guilt. Literally is the way of saying you didn't do it, right? It's a negative word.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you've done anything good. It just means you did not do whatever's wrong.
Right.
That's all it is. You didn't do it. That's all it means. But it's not the same as righteous. Righteous is a positive, powerful word. Righteousness is strength. Righteousness can do things. It says one place, righteousness delivers from death. Innocence doesn't save you from anything, does it?
No.
Innocence can't help you do anything. Innocence can't. What does innocence do for you?
Well, it keeps you in the clear.
No, it doesn't. If it could keep you in the clear, then you'd never go wrong. Does innocence
keeps
protect
you from punishment?
No. Does innocence protect you? Well, Adam was innocent, but it didn't protect him from doing wrong.
Right.
It can't protect you. Innocence can't do anything at all.
Right.
It's just a word that says you did not do whatever's wrong. That's all it means. It doesn't do anything good for you. It doesn't make you right. It doesn't. It just says you didn't do anything wrong. That's all it says.
Right.
So as long as Adam was innocent, he didn't do anything wrong. What did he do?
Before he
While he was innocent, what did he do?
hung out with God.
Hung out with
named
God,
animals.
walked with God, took care of the garden as God said he could do. He made all kinds of decisions about what he'd like. I think I'll have some of this fruit today, some of that kind tomorrow. I think I'll name that animal a hippopotamus and that other, and I'll call him a African dingo or something, you know. But so he did all kinds of things, but he did not do anything wrong. And that so along comes the evil spirit, Satan. Did Satan have a hard time getting Adam to bend?
Not really.
All he did was ask a couple questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how much did innocence protect Adam?
Not a bit.
Innocence is not a shield.
Right.
It didn't protect him from anything. He fell right through to it. So then the Lord said, okay, now the first thing that Adam discovered, having lost that innocence, is that he didn't have any covering. Now, he had been covered with innocence, but that innocence got ripped off of him.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly he is naked.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't naked before. Naked doesn't mean you don't have clothes. It means you had nothing covering you. You had nothing to hide behind. You're vulnerable to whatever comes. Well, as long as he was clothed with innocence, there was no problem. But the minute the innocence got ripped off of him, he suddenly finds himself totally vulnerable. And then at that moment, he hears God coming for his morning walk. And what came to him that had never come before? At that exact moment, when he hears God coming.
Fear.
Fear. He said, I heard you coming, and I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he afraid? He'd never been afraid before. Because innocence was a covering.
Yeah, because he knew that he had treaded on the territory.
Innocence didn't protect him from anything, but it covered him so that here comes God, and there was no reason to be afraid. He had nothing to go away from. So when innocence was ripped off of him, he became just covered with guilt then. And suddenly he finds, here comes God, and he's afraid because there's something here that I don't want God to know about. I don't want him to see. And so he runs and tries to hide in the bushes, you know. And in fact, before that even, he had made himself, he and his wife, coverings of leaves. All right. I asked a Sunday school group one time why they did that. And the pastor's wife said, because leaves are not very durable. He needed something more durable. Is it because the leaves need to be replaced by leather? Leather's better covering than leaves. That had nothing whatever to do with it.
One of them came from the man, and
Yeah.
one of them came from God.
Yeah. So he covered himself with self-effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's all religion is self-effort, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he covered himself with religion, meaning I will make myself look presentable, because what was my being presentable, innocence, that's been stripped off of me. I need something on me that'll make me look good.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts on leaves. All right. So then the Lord comes, and of course, Lord knows everything's going on, but he asks him a few questions. And you know, whenever God asks anybody a question, he's inviting them to repent.
Mm-hmm.
A question is like holding the door open for you. Would you like to come in here? That's what a question does. Whenever a question is asked, what do you have to do?
Answer.
You got to answer. And how are you going to know what to answer? Whatever the question is. Where do you get the answer?
Well, you get the answer from within, you know.
From yourself.
Yeah.
unless you've already gotten answers from God. But at this point, there's a separation. And didn't he die that day? The Lord said, the day you do that, you die.
Mm-hmm.
Not 600 years later.
All right.
You die right now.
Yeah.
And of course, most people don't have an idea what death means. They think it means you quit living or you quit existing. Adam went right on existing for hundreds of years after this, didn't he?
Yeah.
But the moment he rebelled against God, he separated from God. And so when God comes and throws a question at him, he can't answer truthfully because he's been separated from the only truth. Didn't the Lord say, I am the truth?
Yeah.
If you're separated from the truth, then what are you going to answer your questions with? Whatever you've got in your head, right?
Yeah.
And he just thrown innocence is gone.
Yeah.
So what's he going to answer with? He's going to answer out of that Adamic fallen nature.
Yeah.
We use the word fallen. I mean, it fell away from what God was. He was connected to God before. Now it has died from that. It's separated. So now he has to come up with an answer. So God says to him, Adam, where are you? And what does he answer? A true answer would be what?
I'm hiding in the bushes.
I'm over here hiding in the bushes. But that's not what he gave him. What did he give him?
He said, I am naked.
No, he didn't say that.
I forgot. I forgot, but I got my Bible right here.
Oh, you know what he said.
I know what he said.
Adam, where are you? The correct answer would be, I'm over in these bushes. He did not tell him that. He said, I heard you coming, and I was afraid.
Yeah.
What kind of an answer is that to the question, where are you? I heard you coming, and I was afraid. That's a strange answer for that question, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's really saying, I'm away from you, and I don't have the courage to be with you, so I'm separated from you. Is another way of saying it. So then, of course, here comes another. Now, God, of course, knows that's not true. He doesn't argue with him, does he?
No.
He just throws another question. You've been eating that fruit I told you not to. Of course, he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you ask him that?
Because he's inviting him to repent.
Yeah. Now, he said, have you eaten that fruit? If the correct answer would be what?
Yes.
Yes. That's not the answer he got. What did he get?
He blamed that woman.
No, he didn't blame the
He
woman.
blamed God.
He said, this woman that you gave me caused this.
Yeah.
He threw it right into God's face, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's hardly what you'd call repentance, is it?
Right.
But God didn't ask him no more question after that. What did he do then?
Turn to Satan.
No.
Hmm.
Turn to the woman.
Turn to the woman.
Said, what about it? And she said,
That,
well, this serpent tempted me and I ate it.
Yeah.
So she tried to blame the serpent. She did not say God did it.
Right.
She blamed the serpent. Now that woman was really confused. It says she was deceived.
Mm-hmm.
Adam was not deceived. What does deceive mean?
Means you didn't know any better.
Yeah,
You got fooled.
Yeah, in a way, deceiving might.
Tricked.
If you're deceived, you think you're right,
Yeah.
but you're not.
Right.
So you're very wrong, but you think you're right. So Adam knew that he's wrong. There's no question about that. But the woman was deceived. So when Satan offered her the idea, she bought into it because she thought that'd be the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
She really thought she was right. But does that mean she's innocent?
No.
Why not?
Well, that's on Adam, isn't it? You should have taught her better.
Well, yeah, but why isn't she innocent? She thought she was doing the right thing.
Well, because she broke.
Yeah.
Broke the command.
What you think, We have even a saying in our corrupt government, ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law.
Right.
Well, I didn't know it was against the law to drive 90 miles an hour and 25 miles an hour. Well, you did. So ignorance will not excuse you. It's not quite as bad as deliberately doing something wrong, but on the other hand, you still did wrong. So the ultimate, or shall we say, the bulk of the result of the evil came on to Adam. He bore the responsibility, and it's like you said a minute ago. He could have said to her, "No way, we don't do that." He could have corrected her. But instead, he bought into what she'd been deceived by, knowing full well this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even reprimand her for it, according to the way it says. So, anyway, it became his nature to do evil. And, of course, that nature then has been handed down through everybody. So, back to your question about judgment and so on. We would love to be able to conquer this old nature, but we cannot. If we could conquer it, then we wouldn't need God. But God built it right into us that we must depend on, because the knowledge of good and evil, now he did say the man has become like us, meaning he knows good and evil now. But he's already told us what he does with good and what he does with evil. So his nature is to go after the evil, even though he knows what's good. So he knows the difference. And we have this thing that's sometimes mentioned called a conscience.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure. It's the way that it's a function of the mind. It is your internal reasoning structures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the cartoons, it's those little angels on your shoulders of right from wrong. Little angel or the devil on one side.
Well, yeah. The very word conscience, it comes from two roots, con, which means with, and science, or with knowledge. But I don't know exactly how they made that into the word, but it comes down to this. People say they have a guilty conscience. What does that mean?
It means they know they did wrong about something.
Yeah. And that may be a fairly good way to look at it, because conscience can be adjusted.
Yes.
The pirates, the old-time pirates, had a code of ethics that they went by.
Right.
Now, they didn't hesitate to rob, steal, and plunder and murder people, but within their little circle, they had a certain code they went by.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they didn't violate that code, they were welcome in their club.
Mm-hmm.
Even these mad gangs that we have, they have the same sort of a thing.
Right.
They'll have a code that they go by. But it's very evil, even the code. But in their view, it makes the difference between what's right and what's wrong. The conscience can be adjusted. A conscience is kind of like a governor on an engine.
Yeah.
What does a governor do on an engine?
It regulates and keeps it in a certain spot.
Yeah. So you want this generator to run at 3,000 RPM. So you set the governor to control it at 3,000. Maybe it has a certain range. Maybe we can allow it to go to 3,100 down to 2,900. Well, what if you decide I want to run this one slow? We're going to run down to 2,500. You turn the governor down to that range. So the governor doesn't. It all depends on how you set it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for the people that run the hospital over here, Catholics run it. What are they going to use for their code of conduct of how they run this hospital?
Probably an ethical standard set by the church.
Yeah, and so it'll be largely following church doctrine or church theology or something. All right, so you expect them to do that sort of thing. You go in there, they have a morning prayer comes over the loudspeaker, a priest or somebody does that, and if somebody needs some counseling, they'll have somebody that does that, and not bad. You go to Chilkoot Charlie's bar. They have a code of conduct, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And you're allowed to do certain things, and certain things would be unacceptable.
Right.
Is the same as the Catholic hospital.
No.
It's quite different.
Yeah, quite different.
But they both have a conscience. They have a control method that keeps them within a certain range.
Mm-hmm.
How come their control is so different from the one at the hospital?
Well, because one of them is driven by knowledge of God, and the other one is just driven by, well, the objectives of being in those two different places are different.
It's whoever's running it, isn't it?
Yes.
And they've made
well
a choice.
Said. Yeah.
We want it to be like this. The other guy said, well, we want it to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so a conscience is like that. It's just something that tells you you're either going too high or too low,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be changed. So a conscience is not reliable. You know, you've heard people say, just follow your conscience. Just go by your conscience. Well, depending on how your conscience. If you tell the guy at Chilkoot Charlie, just go by your conscience,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to do certain things. If you tell the guy at the hospital, go by your conscience, they're going to do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to be the same. Right. So just your conscience is not reliable to keep you right. It only keeps you within a certain range of accepted operation. And who determines that, you know? So when God said, the man has become like us, he has a knowledge of what's good and evil. Does that mean that he's always, his knowledge is almost like a conscience? Within a certain range, he knows this is good, this is evil. Chilkoot Charlie says this is good, this is evil. The hospital says this is good, this is evil. Are they the same?
No.
No, because they've been adjusted. So you can't go by just the fact of saying you know what's good and bad. Well, it depends on what your definition of good and bad is. So anyway, so Adam is thrown out of the garden, and of course, this garden, some people think it's someplace over in the Middle East. It's not over there anywhere. I think the garden is simply the creation, the way it was made, the whole creation. And when Adam is thrown out of it, it doesn't mean some geographical location you can't go to anymore. It just means that world is no longer where you are. So Adam now lives in the world that we know everywhere. And there it is with Adam's nature everywhere we look, isn't it? And so he's thrown out. But then God says, well, if I just left it like that, what hope would he ever have? Threw him out. Can't live here in this kind of a situation anymore. Now you're going to live out here where trouble, trouble, trouble everywhere you look, right?
Yeah.
Is that how God wants it to wind up?
No.
If that were the case, then Satan could come to God and says, well, you thought you had a good deal going, but I messed it up for you. What do you think about that? And who would win the battle? Satan would have won.
Yeah.
Said, I wrecked what you made. God said,
kind of
no,
makes him God, doesn't it?
I have something called redemption. What does redemption mean?
Buy something back.
Yeah, you buy it back. I'm going to buy it back. And what's the price?
Himself.
His own life. I got to lay my life down, but I will do it. Why? Why am I going to do it?
Because of love.
Because of love. Kneel down and give them a gift. That's what love means. So what's he going to give them?
Himself.
And he's going to give them himself, and that will then, that inward nature you have, that's the divine nature, is going to have something to rejoice about instead of something to be feeling miserable. Can the divine nature feel miserable?
No, I don't think so.
What do you mean?
Well, Yeah, it can.
Isn't there a word that says, do not
Despair.
grieve the Spirit of God?
Right.
How, when you grieve the
Can
Spirit,
despair.
how does the Spirit feel? Miserable.
Miserable. Yeah.
But it's not because he's feeling sorry for himself. Why is he miserable?
Because of love.
Well, what makes him miserable? He never feels sorry for himself. He feels sorry for you.
Yeah.
And it's your hurting and your suffering and your failure. That hurts him because, not because he's feeling it of his own self, he's feeling what it does to you. So he can certainly be grieved. But if we come to the place where redemption does its full job, and of course, ultimately back to the first start about the judgment thing, when the evil is thrown clear out, then that divine nature has something to rejoice about, doesn't it? And the grieving will go away. You know, there's a place where it says, I think it's in Psalms, grieving may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Remember that?
Yeah.
When it says the night and then the morning is reference to resurrection. You know, we live in the dark world. It's nighttime in the world, and has nothing to do with physical darkness. It's just the spiritual situation of the world is ugly and evil and corrupt, so it's called living in the night. In fact, in the Psalm 23, walking in the darkest valley, you know, it's nighttime, but joy comes in the morning. Morning refers to resurrection, and so the grieving will go away. But right now, yeah, it's plain. Is the Spirit of God grieving now?
Yeah, occasionally.
Occasionally?
Yeah, probably all the time.
When does evil go on? Occasionally?
Yeah, all the time.
It's constant.
24/7.
Constant. Every speck of time in the,
A lot of people
every
are-
day is just evil going everywhere. It doesn't mean that's all there is, but evil never takes a break, does it? Is there ever a day off for evil? It's on duty full time, constantly. And the Spirit of God is grieved continuously over that. It's called the man of sorrows. Does that mean he's sorrowful once in a while?
No.
He
It's
is
his
the man of
identity.
sorrows. But he's also joyful because we're back to this number 2 again. There is this and there's that. This makes him grieve. That makes him joyful. Now, the righteousness of God is on duty full time too, isn't it? So he's constantly joyful over that, but he's also constantly grieving. We can't comprehend how can God feel one way and another exactly at the same time, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it is. And to some degree, we even have that possibility. Is it possible for us to be grievous and joyful at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. What are you seeing over there?
I'm looking at that cabbie over there. It looks like he's smoking with a mask on.
Oh.
He sure is. Look at him.
Yeah, well, he's probably required to have a mask on all the time.
That's the first I've seen somebody smoking with a mask on.
If you don't light it on fire, I hope it's fireproof.
He's got his mouth down. He's got a mouth hanging out of it. But
So, the idea that we have these two natures, and that's important to realize, is that we cannot control the old nature with the new nature. You do not have the ability to do that. If you could, then we'd be right back to the beginning. We wouldn't need God. We could just say, well, I know how to handle this. And we'd be right if we could. But the Lord said, no, you can't do it that way. So he gives him this coat of skin, which was simply some animal being sacrificed to provide a skin. And of course, that coat of skin did not take away his sin or didn't change him. It simply covered him. But it said something great. It had a tremendous message. And what's the message?
that God covers you.
Yeah, the fact that it was an animal that was sacrificed is a picture of the sacrificial Lamb of God, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And that does not cover us. I tell people, your sins are not covered.
They're taken away, right?
Yeah. If they were covered, what would be under the cover?
Your sins.
Yeah. So you'd look okay. Well, that's all the leaves that Adam put on. They covered what he looked like, but they didn't change what he is, did they? Mm. And so we're not, if we were just covered so that we look good, well.
So God shares his nature with us.
Yes.
And that's the good news.
And it becomes, if we're sharing the divine nature, then that new man, or it's referred to sometimes, the new man, has the nature of the Lord. And what does the nature of God do? I mean, what is it?
Love.
It makes him do everything God does. Can God ever do anything wrong? Mm-mm. So if you have the divine nature, can you do anything wrong?
Not with the divine nature.
No. But the sad part is you still have the nature of Adam within you. So there's two natures. And that's why when you know you're doing something out of order, the new nature is grieved. It always is. And you'll always feel bad about it because the new nature says, this is not our way. We can't live like this. But look at what we're doing. So isn't that what the apostle cried out? He said, who's going to rescue me from this body of sin? Rescue me. The body don't need to be rescued, but what's running this body is the nature. Rescue me from that, because until I'm not rescued from that, I'm grieved. So when the apostle wrote that word, was he a happy man, joyfully rejoicing? He was miserable and grieved, and he cried out, who's going to save me from this mess? Why is he crying?
Because he wanted to be saved.
Well, he's not being saved, but being rescued from this, the work of this evil nature. But he says, who's gonna help me? I can't. I try to make it right. We always try to do the right thing, but when you try to do the wrong or the right thing, I can promise you'll do the wrong thing.
Right.
Because one way that we're made is that the divine nature does not have power over. I say the divine nature means the new nature that we have does not have power over the old nature to stop it.
Right.
All we can do is present ourselves to God. And it says, is it Romans 5 where he says that we are to present ourselves to God as a sacrifice and our members as instruments. What is that, chapter 5, Romans? I think it is.
5, 6. Yeah.
You present yourself to God as a sacrifice and your members as an instrument of righteousness. That's what it says in our translation. Now, so he's got two. You yourself and your members. That's two different things. What's you yourself?
Who you are, your soul.
Yeah, with the divine nature.
Oh, okay.
You present that. You do not say, I'll handle this myself.
Right.
You go to God and say, I'm here with you. And these members that I live in, I'm also offering them to you as a instrument of righteousness. And the word that's translated instruments, as I understand in the old language, it meant like a weapon of war. In the early days, they had these big catapults. Mm-hmm. They were called war engines or engines of war. And, of course, the modern equivalent would be artillery. And there's a story that I knew that in the Korean War, there was, and I think it was in a unit that I was connected with, the 90th Artillery right there. Anyway, they had one gun that they were using, a big 90 millimeter artillery. And they were overrun by the Chinese soldiers in the war. So they abandoned the gun. Mm-hmm. The Chinese captured. What do you think they did?
Use it against them?
They turned it around and started firing at the Americans with it until they ran out of ammunition. Then they couldn't get any more, so the Americans recaptured it, restocked the ammo, turned it back around and fired at the Chinese. 5 times that thing changed hands in a war. Now, the gun, they don't care. It has no thought. It just shoots at whatever you point it at. And so, who decides what that gun's going to do?
The operator.
Whoever's running it. If it's the GIs on this side, fine. If it's the Chinese on this side, too bad. So, when he says present yourself to God, that means within yourself, the new man, you offer yourself to God as a living sacrifice. Which means if you're a living sacrifice to God, what part of you do you hang on to?
None of it.
Every bit. I am yours, whatever. And I also got this body. Now, this body is capable of killing.
Yeah.
It's a weapon of war. If it's under the control of the Spirit of God, what will it do?
Good things.
What?
Righteousness.
It's a weapon. It's a piece of heavy artillery. What will it do?
Destroy.
Destroy what?
Evil.
Yes. If this body is presented to God, it's going to be used to fight against evil. But if it's not, the evil will overrun, and then what will it do?
It'll be an instrument of destruction.
Against who?
Against that body.
What body?
That flesh.
No, that's the instrument. That's the piece of artillery. If the enemy gets control of it, what will that body do?
Destroy the good.
What good?
It'll overshadow the good nature of the light, right? It doesn't have the power.
You'll start screaming, crucify him. Pilate, put him to death. We will not have this man ruling over us.
Yeah.
How far do you think this human flesh we live in could go? If we could do it, we would destroy God. And if you could destroy another one of the believers, that would hurt. But if you could do that, who is surrounded by a hedge of protection from God, then what do you have to do to get to that other guy?
To get through that hedge again.
And what's the hedge?
The Lord himself.
And you would do it.
Yeah.
So it's so important that it's two procedure. You present yourself. That's the inward man that you are, that with the divine nature. You offer yourself to God. You don't say, I'll try to stop this evil nature I got. Forget that. You hand yourself to God, and with the idea that I got a problem here, but you're my only hope. You are the Redeemer. You are the Savior. You are the this and that. You're the hedge of protection. You're everything I need. So I give myself to you, and I'm offering this body that I got to you. Now, the body is just like a piece of artillery. It has no brains. It doesn't care. Your body will do whatever the inward man tells it to do, won't it? Your hands and feet. I mean, if you say, walk into a cat house and screw some whore, it'll do it. Body, you can't blame the body. It's not the body's fault. Whose fault is it? It's that evil-natured man who's within you, that a descendant of Adam. But you present that to God. You say, you're the only one that can stop this evil in it. You're the only one that can control it. I can't control it. Yeah. You can. So when a man has done that, present himself to God and the flesh to be used as a weapon or an instrument, it's just a machine. That's offering it to God. Then what happens?
God will use it.
And you start doing things that God wants to do. So one body can hand out good things to someone who needs it, another can destroy them. And is that because this is a good body and that's a bad body? But they got something running it that's different. The body, when someone becomes what we call a converted believer, say they've been living for 40 years and they become a believer, and what happens to the body?
It just keeps on going.
Does it look any different than it did the day before? No change. And if you saw the guy, when the Apostle Paul was known as Saul of Tarsus, he was feared all over the world or the known world by the believers, wasn't he? Why?
Because he was a killer.
All right. So one day, he came into a relationship with the Lord. And now he goes back out there to those same believers, and they were scared.
He says, hey, I'm a friend now.
You don't look like you look just like you did the last time when I saw you haul these people off to the lions. Was there any outward change?
He might have been smiling more.
Oh, he smiled plenty when they hauled him off to the lions. He was having fun.
That's right.
I don't think there was a licking bit of change in him. But very soon, what would they start seeing that would change their mind?
His actions were different.
He'd start doing things differently.
Yeah.
He'd start really reflecting the truth of God to them, and of course with his words and his actions and his reactions and all that. And but for a moment, the body itself is not changed. It's just like when the Chinese took over that American artillery, the gun looked just the same under their operators did on the Americans. Only difference was which direction was it pointing. That's the only difference, was it? Mm-hmm. And the gun, you can't blame the gun. It wasn't its fault. It just was doing what it made to do. It's who's running it. So when the Lord begins to run your life, there will come outward appearance changes after a while because you just start handling things differently, But the main thing is that's what's going on within. And so one of the hard parts that people have to understand is this fact that we've got two natures. Mm-hmm. They can't. In fact, there are those who think we have three natures. They call it body, soul, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not correct. You know why?
Why?
Okay, you got body. You don't have a soul.
You are a soul.
You are a soul. The soul has a body. And the body is a possession. It's just something you got. It's not permanent, not in its present state anyway. It's temporary. It goes from being a baby to an old geezer after a while, if you live long enough. Yeah. It's corrupted. It gets sick. It gets injured. It's lazy and whatever, You got that. What about this spirit thing? Is that something that is part of you? Which part of you is the spirit?
Drawing from the Hebrew, it's the nephesh. It's the living, breathing stuff inside.
It's just being alive. That's all. Mm-hmm. What's the word for spirit in Hebrew?
Nephesh?
No. Ruach.
Ruach. Just like
wind. Same as wind. Wind is just air, isn't it? But still, they're never called wind. What does it have to be wind?
It's to have movement.
It's got to be moving. And the faster it moves, the stronger the wind. That's all. Wind means air moving. Mm-hmm. That's all it means. Or it can mean breath or breathing or being alive. So when it says Adam was formed of the dust of the ground, if you could see him formed, what would you be looking at right then?
Bunch of mud coming together.
Yeah, he looks like a man, but he's just a clay or mud object, ground object. He can't do anything. He's just a lifeless thing like a statue. And then it says God breathed into him. Breathed in it means he literally say blew into him, like wind blowing into him, and he became a living soul. So the spirit, it just simply means being alive, and of course, it says God breathed his life into this man. Life, if you could take a guy to the hospital and have him, put him on surgery and find where the life is. I mean, life is not a part of you. It's just you either are alive or you're not. Mm-hmm. That's all. It's not part of you. You're not partly a spirit. you have spirit because that means you have life. But you are a soul. And by the way, how long do souls live?
Forever.
They never die. No soul ever dies. They may separate from this physical existence. That doesn't change who you are. Just like here we're sitting in this machine, and when we go home and turn it off, get out. We don't quit living, but we quit being in this thing. And this is like a body that we're in.
Yeah.
The spirit is the fact that you're alive. If you were just a mannequin sitting there, you could just stay there forever and nothing would ever happen. But so when God breathes life into him, he became a living soul, and that breathing only means spirit. That's all, life. He's got life. And so you're not partly body, partly soul, and partly spirit like people think. You are one thing, a soul. You indwell a physical situation. The Lord says the day will come when even the physical will be changed into a perfect one that's not subject to decay and so on. But even then, it's just a means, without a body, you're alive and real, but how can you relate to anybody without a body? How can a soul talk?
No.
Can it shovel dirt? I mean, what can a soul do if there's no body? It just exists. It can, if someone has passed out of this world, it says to be absent in the body, to be present with the Lord. The soul can communicate with the Lord and be rejoicing, I'm sure. But it still needs a body in order to relate to anybody. But spirit, that's not part of you. The spirit is the fact that you have life.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, without life, you're just a clay form like Adam when he was first formed. He looked, if you could have seen him, he would look like a perfect man, wouldn't he? Only one thing about him, can't do anything because there's no spirit, there's no life. And so this concept that people are body, soul, and spirit, it gives a false concept there. They think there's three different things. I even heard people say that the soul is something evil about the soul. That's your humanity or something. But, if that's true, then, boy, that really puts some strange thoughts into it. So the soul is the bad part of you and the spirit's the good part. You know what I mean? That just isn't, there's nothing about that. Whenever the Lord speaks about soul, he's talking about one who is living because God put life into him. And so when he says, I've come to give you life that's more abundant, you already have life, but I'm going to give you a better life. So how many lives you got?
This one.
A lousy life and a better one? I mean, but your life that you have, said you're alive, but you're just a being that has the ability to move around, say things, and do things. But I'm gonna put the life that really goes somewhere, that does something into you, and so the better life that he gives you, says, I've come to give you a more abundant life. Well, is there something in you that suddenly gets bigger and more strong than it was before? I mean, it's not have nothing a part of you. It's an experience that you have. I've come to give you a life that gives you relationship to God, that something to work to make you right. So these are things that I think a lot of theologians have kind of dreamed up stuff that just doesn't really add up, doesn't do anything.
Okay, I got another question.
Okay.
How do I pose this question? Okay, so it's about the household of the faithful, right? So the question is we got our kids, we're raising them up in the Lord, to acknowledge God, pray, read the Bible, and so this question comes from Alicia, and it's basically that it's us trying to come to the terms that we're kind of raising our kids differently than we were raised.
Yeah.
Because what we were taught was, all right, it's Sunday, we go to church because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And you don't take communion because you're not a baptized believer yet.
Yeah.
And, when you get to the age of accountability, then, you can make your own decisions, but you're still going to do what we got to do until you get out of here. But, you can make your own decision. You can get baptized, and then you can be a member of the church. And, since,